Hi guys, welcome to Sommelier Talks. Today I'm here in the heart of Scotland, 5 kilometers north from Pitlochry, to meet with Matilda Tsappis. She's the co-owner and head sommelier at Killiecrankie House. She has a very interesting story, so let's go and meet her.
I'm Matilda Tsappis. I am a co-owner and head sommelier at Killiecrankie House, co-owner with my husband Tom. So this is actually a second career for both of us. So we started in wildly different places. So Tom and I met in Tokyo, and Tom was working in finance as a money broker, and I worked in advertising, mostly for Coca-Cola.
Okay.
So completely different backgrounds. And for Tom, he sort of started getting into cooking when we were living in Japan together. Mostly because he just missed home food. And Japanese food is delicious, but if you try and get, a salt beef bagel, you're not going to find one in Tokyo. So he had to sort of make it himself. So he sort of got into cooking that way. And then he retrained when we moved back to the UK. For me, I actually continued my day job. So I worked in advertising for well over a decade with sort of various different clients and stuff in London. And we went on a road trip around France years ago. And we sort of started in Paris, and we did like a full circle, and we hit all the sort of main wine regions. And did lots of tours and things and started to get into wine. So when I got back from that, I did my double set one, and I think it's one of those things that with wine, once you start, you can't stop, and the more you learn, the more you realize that you know nothing. And then also the added thing to that is that my dad actually has a vineyard in China, in Shandong province, and it's next door to the Lafitte Rothschild vineyard, and he would say that they are next door to him because he was there first, which is his sort of claim to fame. But so wine was always in the background for me, and then it started getting more and more serious. I used to sort of study a little bit more, and then from a hobby, it became something that I wanted to move into. And then COVID happened, and we were living in our tiny 1-bedroom flat in South London, and it was horrific. And obviously Tom couldn't do anything because there was no restaurants or, and I knew that I wanted to move back to Scotland, which is where I grew up. I grew up in Fife. So we started looking. So when the first lockdown lifted, we did a sort of a road trip around Scotland, having a sort of, starting to look at places, but also just a bit of a holiday. And this place came up, and we thought, this is perfect. How could you not, love it? And actually it was in May. So around this time of year that we visited, and we're like, it's just so beautiful. And so it all happened quite quickly. So we looked in May, got the keys in November, and started renovating sort of a couple of months after. So we would say it's a restaurant first, so a restaurant with rooms. So people check in sort of later in the afternoon. They can go for a walk, whatever. We do sort of whiskey tastings and things which I host, or have cocktails in the garden or whatever, and then we'll do our tasting menu for dinner. Now it's a set tasting menu, so no one ever has any choice, and everyone eats at the same time. So we start in the lounge or the bar with some small snacks while people are enjoying their drinks, and then we'll sort of head on through once we've had the snacks for the sort of more plated courses. And it's quite unusual, I would say, in terms of the sort of fine dining in Scotland, in that it's, whilst using sort of Scottish produce, of course, there's quite a heavy Japanese influence. because of my heritage and where we met, and Tom started cooking when we were in Japan. So a lot of the flavors and the techniques are sort of Japanese based. So so you have to be into that sort of thing, really, because it is quite heavily influenced that way. We usually do around sort of 18 courses, so it's quite it's a hefty, it's a long thing. And then once we finish the meal, we sort of head back through to the lounge, and then people recline and they have their petit four and their whiskies and their after dinner drinks, and then people roll up to bed. So it's interesting actually, because what we've found with our wine pairings is that we try not to make them too long and too many glasses. We started with that at the beginning, but what it meant that we kept on having to interrupt people, when they were having conversations and things, and actually people would be put off by how many glasses it would be. And I do understand that. I've been to some tasting menus, actually a lot of the sort of Michelin ones in Spain, and the last one I went to, there was 17 glasses. Even for me, that is a lot. So it is exhausting. Yeah, exactly. And then you sort of get a bit of palate fatigue. So actually, at the moment, we just do 5 glasses. Okay. And what we do is I work very closely with Tom and the chefs to organise the menu in a way that sometimes a pairing will go over 2 courses or 3 courses. Okay.
Find something that could be harmonious for
exactly
courses.
And actually it can be quite fun, because you can have a wine that is in terms of the sort of contrast, and then compare, it can work with different dishes in slightly different ways, and actually that can be quite fun in and of itself. So that tends to be what we do. Also, we have a sake on all of our pairings, because obviously being half Japanese and with such a strong sort of Japanese influence in the menu, it works really well. So actually we start off our pairings at every level, even the prestige level, we'll start with a sake. And actually people have been really receptive to it, because I was a bit worried that it would sort of freak people out. But a lot of people have tried maybe a bad sake in the past, and they think it's a spirit, or there's quite a lot of sort of confusion about it as a drink. But when you introduce it properly, and actually when they taste a good one, they're like, oh, it's delicious. So I feel like I've been helping to sort of fly the flag for sake in Scotland now.
Ambassador for it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You have, a part of the wine list, you also have a sake list?
Yes, yeah, we have a sake list, and always with the wine list, we try to have some slightly unusual things on there as well. So we'll have some of the classics and things, because some guests, they just know what they like and that's what they want, fine. But because obviously with my dad having Chinese wine, I've always been quite interested and open to wines from lesser known regions and areas. So actually our sort of entry level pairing is called the discovery pairing. Okay. And the reason is so that people can explore wines that are maybe from an unusual grape variety that they haven't heard of, or slightly unusual regions, and so we get to have a little bit of fun with sort of that level of pairing. So how many pairings are you running at the moment? So 3 pairings and then 1 non-alcoholic one. Okay, and how is people recepting the non-alcoholic? Really well, just because of where we're placed. We do have 2 floating tables, so tables for non-residents. So if people are staying in Pitlochry or Blair Atholl and they have to drive, it makes sense if one of them is doing the non-alcoholic pairing, because it's it'd be a shame just to have like Coca-Cola all night.
Exactly. Serving sodas, regular sodas.
Yeah, exactly. And Molly, who's our head of the bar, she does all these wonderful various sort of creative things with the non-alcoholic pairing, which I can't take any credit for. And what we found is that actually, because I know a lot of places they'll buy in non-alcoholic options, but actually we've found it's been really fun creating our own thing. So she's a very busy lady. She's been in charge of all that.
And a full sake pairing menu? Have you thought on doing that? Or
So we've discussed it, and sometimes we have some regular guests who really love sake, and I'll sort of do one on the spot for them. And definitely in our future, I would like to do a full sake pairing, but I think we're not at the point yet where we're so consistently full. And that we'd be able to go through it as much. I don't want to open a bottle and for it to go to waste. So from a sort of purely commercial point of view, we can't do it yet, but definitely in our future. I think, honestly, still our pairings are probably the most popular option. I think there's something quite nice about just like, especially with a tasting menu, where you just sit there and people just bring you delicious food and delicious drinks. Then you don't have to think about it or worry about like what you might want to drink versus what the other person wants to drink, and it's a sort of a fun thing. So I think most people still go with pairings. So actually, one of your wines is one of my favourite pairings actually at the moment. So on the Discovery pairing, for our sort of main meat course, it's a braised pork dish which has elements of sort of sweetness to the sauce, almost like char siu or sort of notes to it. And it goes really well with the Veronica Romero, the Duarte, the Bobal Tempranillo blend, and because that is such a juicy, sort of plush, sort of fruited note, and I find that really works well with some of the sort of sweeter elements in the meat dish, and people love it, and it's going really well. So when we first opened, we had my dad's Chinese red on, the sort of main meat pairing. We were doing venison at the time, and actually that worked really well, and people were really receptive to it. Because I think when people think Chinese wine, they're like, oh God, what? Well, I'm gonna find here. And people really loved it. So that was quite nice, and also sort of a proof of concept that we can introduce people to some unusual things, and actually they'd enjoy it, they'd be receptive to it. So I think that was sort of cool. So I think one which I need to explore more is Japan. Now, we don't get that much Japanese wine over here, so I haven't extensively tasted any, but I have heard of some really interesting wineries up in Hokkaido, and we try to go back to Japan every year, mainly because with the little one now, I want her to learn Japanese culture and feel sort of part of that, but also we like to go and eat, and then Tom buys like tons of crockery and plates and what have you. You usually have to buy another suitcase to bring it all back. So Japanese wine is something that I'm interested in finding out more about. We did serve at one point like a traditional method sparkling Japanese, which was very nice, but I feel like we're only sort of scratching the surface. So that's something that I want to get more into.
There's still no many importers bringing Japanese wine into the UK, I guess.
Not really, or not extensively for sure. So yes, I think that's something that I might have to explore when I'm out there. I think it's a really, it's an interesting question, because obviously I came from it from a completely different place. And I do think that nowadays people changing careers is such a normal thing. When I was at university, I had no idea that wine could be a career. It just had never crossed my mind, to be honest. So I think, I guess helping to fuel that sort of interest in people. We get a lot of, young guests who come like with their parents and things. So, I guess sort of introducing them to that element of things. And also just, nurturing and helping to train them. And because I think also probably a lot of people join just as front of house first, and then they understand that sommelier is a sort of career path later on. And I would say also compared to maybe some parts of Europe, haven't quite got it right yet in terms of helping to promote front of house as like a real sort of career path. a lot of people fall into it, whereas I feel like on the continent maybe that's seen as a more sort of prestigious
Like
career.
A proper path that you can follow, yes.
Yeah, so I do wonder if that is something that sort of as a country we could do better at.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like Master Chef and things. So the chef thing, I think, Great British Menu and all that. So I feel like that's been a bit more established. But really, when you think of front of house, Fred is the only one that comes to mind. And a lovely role model, but
something kind of Master Chef, but related to sommeliers or something like that.
Something that, house, exactly. Maybe something that we need to do better at as a country, but. Get in touch. We're always looking for new stuff. But yeah, no, just like have a go.
Right down here.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think it's just one of those ones that, but like it's no, there's no. Like the whole country, there's a massive shortage on hospitality staff at the moment, so everyone's looking. So just like get in touch, email restaurants that you think are awesome and that you're interested in, or their wine program looks fun, and just get in touch and like have a go. Yeah. Yeah, I'm sort of interested. I'm quite enjoying Portuguese field blends at the moment.
Okay.
It's something that the winemaker for Guru, Soul and Wine, or Wine and Soul, she was doing a talk, was it last year or maybe even the year before? And she was showing her wonderful images of the Douro Valley, somewhere that I haven't visited yet, which I must do. But it just looked amazing. And then we tried the wines, and I just think that, field blends, I think, are really, an interesting thing. Or they're always difficult when you're explaining them to customers, because they're like, there are which varieties, and there's always like 15 great varieties, none of which you can pronounce properly, but that's, I think you can always tell what I'm into by my wine list, because I always slightly over-index and how many needs to be on the list, to be honest. But yeah, Portuguese field blends at the moment are a thing.
No, I like to hear that, because me as a Galician, we share a lot of field blends as well.
Yeah.
Because it's the memory of the people from the past. People used to plant different varieties just to find the style that they want to drink in the vine. They didn't correct it in the winery. They were doing the corrections by planting this or that.
Yeah, no, that's cool. And I found out that in Austria, in certain areas, that used to be traditional as well. Yeah. So we have there's an Austrian field blend which is lovely by a lady called Ingrid Groys, who I sort of enjoy just also because she started her career working for Coca-Cola.
Yes.
So I have a lot of empathy with her. And she does a wonderful field blend as well. So yeah, no, it's a thing.
That could be a nice section for the list in the future. No,
field blends. Yeah, that's so true actually. Also nice with the weather. Yeah.